Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, now is the time again when it's a rebirth of life, really, with spring coming on. And one of the signs of that has always been, to me, to see all the families that start gathering along the shoreline of some of our lakes to fish for panfish and bullheads. You know, I hardly ever have talked about bullheads, but that's the way a lot of kids get into fishing, is they go out with their parents and they'll have little chairs that they take and they'll sit along the bank and use live bait, worms. Worms are just wonderful to use. And you throw out there in these bullhead. I'm not sure where they're coming from, whether they lay in the mud or what they do, but the best time to fish bullheads has always been, from the time I was a kid, has always been at night. Similar to like walleye fishing is so much better after dark. But bullheads, that's when they become very active, is after dark. But you see so many people this time of the year sitting along the shoreline fishing, and this is just as much fishing and just as important to life as all the other sport fishing we talk about. If this gives people fun to get the family out together, to feel that fresh air as it's starting to warm up again after a long winter and hear the sounds of nature, it's a wonderful way to start a new year. And it's always been sort of a passing here in the North Country. You know, the fire departments would have bullhead feeds, and bullheads play a big role, and yet we hardly ever talk about them. You know, you think of bass, the glory fish that sort of runs the outdoor economy, but bullheads play a really big role too, maybe even a bigger role with families. And a lot of times, you know, we don't talk enough, I think, about pan fishing as well. At the same time, you see all the people out with their chairs and sitting there, mother, fathers, grandparents, all sitting there watching the water, waiting for the fish to hit. Usually they have their rods propped up on some kind of a little spiked twig or something so they don't have to hold it and they can just watch it. And it's certainly not not the greatest sport, but it may be one of the most fun sports for an awful lot of people. And I wish everybody now that's been waiting all winter to get back out and catch bullheads all the good luck and fun that they can have. You know, the other thing is, when we're fishing panfish, and we can kind of count bullheads as one of these things, they do fit in a pan. And they've always been a big part of our fish diet, I think, you know, with bullhead feeds. But several years ago, bullheads started having parasites or grubs in their flesh, and it stopped a lot of places from having bullhead dinners. So that's something you ought to be concerned with. You know, I never saw parasites in bullheads when I was a kid, but on the stream I grew up in, it was a trout stream, and the bullheads that we would catch were not very big. They were probably 5 or 6 inches long, max. Whereas when you get into a pond or a bigger body of water, a lot of times the bullheads can grow to over a foot long, and they can become really good eating. So if you like to bullhead fish, it won't be long and you'll get a chance to go out there. Once the water starts to warm a bit, all the fishing gets better. Their metabolisms start to turn on and they start feeding more. But again, it's to me, it's the beginning of a new world of fishing for this year. So I hope to see you out there. Until next time, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.